Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and Happy New Year, because believe it or not, this is the very first upload of 2025. January kind of got away from me. There was a lot of things going on, stuff that I don't necessarily want to dive into, but we're back. We're back with some fun videos here in the middle of snowy January here in Utah. And something I've realized is I've really kind of failed you guys on one of the things I used to do all the time, which is to give you updates on the vehicles that I own. Now, if you guys recall, I picked up this Rivian R1T back in July of 2024, and believe it or not, it's been 6 months already, 6,000 miles that I've driven this vehicle, and I really haven't given you too many updates on the process. There's even some videos that I still planned on uploading, like how much I'm paying for this car and all that, but unfortunately, I guess for me as well, I had some press cars, and those take priority over the vehicles that I own. And so today I wanted to give you, as the title says, the real truth about owning this car over the last 6 months, because it really hasn't been ideal and it's been a little bit of a disappointing experience. And I'll explain why. So today's video is for those of you that are considering one of these vehicles, you're into the EVs and you really want to get one, but you're kind of on the fence. Well, this video is kind of intended to push you back off the fence and get you away from this car. And if at the end of the video you still think you want one, then you're probably going to be okay with it. But my experience has been less than ideal, and honestly, it has nothing to do with the fact that this is an electric vehicle. It has to do more with the fact that the company is a little bit of a dumpster fire. Let's get right into it. All right, since there's a snowstorm outside, we're going to jump in for a moment because the stuff I'm going to talk about really has nothing to do with the car. It has to do with the company, and that's how I'm going to split up this video. The first is going to be talking about my experience with Rivian as the company, and then I'll talk about some of the issues I've had with my car, specifically the most recent service experience that I took this vehicle in for, and all the issues that they had to fix. Now, I will be doing a separate 6-month update talking about the things I like, dislike, general experiences as a separate video, because this one's really just focused mostly on the brand and on the issues I've had, not necessarily the things I've loved, which there's been a lot of, and I'll talk about that in a different video with my 6-month update. So first thing that really makes me upset at the brand is my experience from the very beginning. When I first found this car on their website and reserved it and started the ordering process, I was genuinely curious about what the money factor is. And as some of you may know, I talked about it in other videos, I'm actually leasing this vehicle. And with leases, you kind of want to know the interest rate, because that impacts what your residual value is going to be and really how good the deal is. You know, just looking at the monthly payment only gives you, a portion of the full picture. And so I really wanted to know the interest rate, because I was looking at other vehicles. Hint, hint, Hummer EV was one of the ones that had actually a pretty aggressive release, but when I found out what the money factor was, it just didn't make sense to me. So I was really curious about what the money factor or the interest rate is on the lease. And when I went through and did the whole loan application process and everything, this was my first kind of issue with the company. Was I was not given any of the information on the money factor. And I looked at the loan docs and they were not there. And after I applied for the loan, I asked them about this. I asked my sales advisor, and he pretty much point blank asked me, like, well, why do you need to know this information? Well, maybe because I am paying for this car, maybe because I want to know what my interest rate is. Like, I feel like that's disclosure for any loan that I've ever taken out. In fact, for some of the vehicles I was looking at, I didn't actually even apply for the loan application before they already told me the money factor. You know, they're just assuming if you have good credit, this is going to be your money factor, and that way you can have that information. Very transparent process, but Rivian was very hidden about this. I mean, they were concealing all this information. Finally, after fighting the guy back and forth, I'm like, I need to know this information. He ended up calling me and telling me, whatever it was. It was an awesome money factor, by the way. It was less than 0.5%. When you do the math. But that was my first experience where they didn't want to tell me what my interest rate is on the lease, which was a very odd thing. The next thing is I was going through and kind of finalizing everything, ready to go pick up the car in Denver. They told me to add insurance on the vehicle, which makes sense, right? Typically, when I've gone and leased or purchased a vehicle, I add the insurance the time that I'm there. I just go onto the app that I have with my insurance company, I add the VIN number, and there you go. I show it to them. They let me drive home. In fact, I've even had times where I've driven home and then they're like, hey, can you just send it to me tomorrow morning or something like that, because maybe your insurance agent isn't working. That's been perfectly fine in the past. For some reason, Rivian does things a little bit differently. And they had me add insurance on the car before I actually took possession of the vehicle. They said they couldn't release the final loan documents or have me sign the final loan docs until insurance was placed on the car. And even though with my insurance company, I set the date of my active insurance, the date I was picking it up, that was not good enough for Rivian. They wanted me to actually show it on my declarations page before I picked up the car. So I was backdating my insurance on a vehicle I didn't actually have in my possession. And I ended up conceding. I ended up doing that to make it a little bit easier for the process of signing the docs on the date that I was picking up the car. The next thing that was really annoying was the loan documents themselves. When I submitted the insurance and they sent me the loan documents, the date on the loan documents was backdated again. So I was picking the car up on, say, the 24th. They put the date as the 22nd. And I reached out to them and said, well, hold up. I'm not actually taking possession of the car until the 24th. These documents have to say the 24th because that's legally when I'm taking possession. That's when I'm going to start paying for the car. I'm not starting payment before I take delivery. That's how I've done it with literally every other manufacturer I've worked with when I've, or dealership, I should say, when I go to buy a car. It's always the date that I'm buying the vehicle. And so they were fighting me on that. And I said, no, I'm not signing this document. Even though, when you start breaking it down per day, I'm really just paying like $20-30. Not a huge deal, but I don't own the car. Just out of the principle of it, I don't want to pay for something before I actually have it in my possession. And so I fought them on this. And finally, the morning of me flying into Denver, they sent me the documents via email and I was able to do it. That was the other frustrating thing is I could not get them to ship this car. I asked about it. I asked, I'll pay for my own private shipping company. I'll sign all the documents and they'll pick up the car from your dealership or your service center and ship it back to me here in Utah. And they said, no, I had to physically fly out to Denver because I have to physically sign all the paperwork, which in a direct-to-consumer model seems a little bit odd, right? You would think that everything could be done with DocuSign or with some sort of digital signing platform and nothing had to be done in person. But I also realized that there's also certain state laws that limit what Rivian can do. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for that, but they really weren't flexible on any of this process. I had to fight them just to get it to match up to what I'm used to with any typical dealership model that I've dealt with. It really made me question the direct-to-consumer model. Now, for the next thing that happened in the very beginning is when I took delivery of the vehicle, they said I would be getting a NACS adapter. So that's the National Auto Standard, whatever, the Tesla charging port. Is the adapter that I would be getting some point in time after taking delivery of the vehicle so that I could take this to a Tesla supercharger and plug and play. Because at the point of me picking up this vehicle in July, Tesla had already accepted Rivian into their network. So really the only thing that was stopping me from going to a Tesla charger was that adapter because my vehicle uses the CCS port for fast charging, if it opens up, instead of the NACS charger or port that Tesla products use. Now, when I picked up the car, they said that it's included, of course, and you'll probably, and I remember this very distinctly from the service center here over in Denver, they said I would get it sometime in the fall, probably September, October. Maybe he said October at the latest. Well, here we are in January, late January of 2025, and believe it or not, I got in the mail just last week, probably 3 or 4 days ago. I finally got it, folks. I finally got the NACS adapter. Now, not a huge deal for me because I charge at home and I don't do too many road trips in this vehicle. And the places that I do go, I usually have a place to charge at my destination. So I've actually used a household 110 outlet at some of the destinations I've gone to, and that charges about 2 miles an hour, and it's actually been enough for me to just kind of get there and get back home. But anyway, nonetheless, they promised October. Here we have it in January, finally. The next thing that they promised me was a tonneau cover. In fact, on my window sticker, there was a line item that said tonneau cover included to be installed later. And I distinctly remember, I believe it was on their website, they said that it would be available by December of 2024. Well, here we are in January of 2025, and I've got no tonneau cover. Now, I have asked about this. This is kind of related to my recent service center visit. When I went to the service center, I asked them to find out about the status of this because, like I said, it was supposed to be installed in December, and I actually really need it. I do put a stroller in the trunk area. I actually have to hide it underneath my truck bed, which thankfully it fits underneath there, but it's not ideal to pull it in and out. Like, having a tonneau cover would be very useful, especially when I take like little shorter road trips, to just throw stuff back there, close it up so it's not snowing all the time on the stuff I have back there. So one of the reasons I really liked this truck was I knew it came with a tonneau cover. And so I asked about this in my last service center visit. And well, first off, when I dropped the car off, they said they would find out about it and they would let me know. A couple days go by and they communicate with you via the application. Well, I open up the app and, you know, they give me some updates about the car, the stuff I was getting fixed, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. And I asked them about the tonneau cover, and only for them, and I have text of this, I could show proof, only for them to respond and say, actually, we don't do anything with the tonneau cover. You have to call the main service center hotline and they'll be able to help you out. And I said, well, that's great and all, but first off, you guys promised to me that you would find out about this information when I arrived at the service center. Why didn't you tell me back then that you couldn't actually find out that information? And secondly, you guys are the same company. You're both Rivian. It's like the left hand isn't talking to the right hand. I'm not sure if they were just unwilling to reach out on my behalf, or if they literally just don't have access to the systems, which is just bizarre. Like, you can't message a single person inside of your organization to find out the status of the tonneau cover. So anyways, I ended up calling the Rivian main hotline call center, only for them to tell me, oh no, the service center could give you an update. So again, just miscommunication left and right. Anyways, they told me on the phone call that you know, when you go to pick up your car from the service center, just ask them about it. They'll be able to give you an update as to the timing, because I'm going to be doing some research on my end and I'll give them an update. Well, a couple days go by, I go pick up the car, no update about the tonneau cover, no information whatsoever. Now, a few days go by and I have an issue with my underbed storage. So the place where I put the stroller over here, located underneath the vehicle, I had an issue with this lever. So let me make sure that the camera is showing okay. So this lever, it's kind of popped out, right? Like it doesn't really, it's obviously busted, because before it would sit flat and now it's not really sitting flat. So I'm a little concerned that this is gonna lock the stroller located underneath here permanently underneath the vehicle. So I'm actually being very careful about this. And so I ended up scheduling a little service appointment through the app. And when I got it scheduled, I got a phone call saying that they can't actually do a mobile service. They need you to come into the location itself, which is like, that's great, awesome. First you tell me I can do a mobile service, now you're telling me I can't, whatever, let's schedule something. So I call them up, and that's when I ask them about the tonneau cover, and the lady on the phone says, oh yeah, your tonneau cover's ready. Let me just see if we can arrange a time that the parts can come in at the same time you take in the vehicle for that little lever. And she says, I'll call you back. So 2 days go by, no phone call back. So I call back Rivian and I tell them, you know, hey, what's the status of this? And they say, oh, well, we have no record of this tonneau cover being available. We don't actually know. Let me connect you with your local service center here in Utah. So I talked to them, same update. Oh, we're not sure. We actually have no idea if your tonneau cover is ready. So long story short, which is already a very long story, they messaged me on the app saying that when I take this vehicle in to get that lever fixed, they're going to install the tonneau cover. Now, I'm very hopeful of that, but I'm also very doubtful of it, because so far, Rivian, one person tells me something, the other person tells me another thing, and neither of those two seem to be accurate. So I'm not quite sure. I'm hoping when I take this vehicle in to get that lever fixed, I will finally have the tonneau cover that Rivian promised me over 6 or 7 months ago. Jumping back inside, because it's really starting to come down out there. Another thing I wanted to mention about the service experience was it wasn't that great either. So I dropped the vehicle off and they took me to an Enterprise that's kind of close to get a rental car, because they didn't have a Rivian that was available. Ideally, it would have been nice to have either the R1S or R1T, but whatever. At least they're getting me a rental car. I'm not having to figure it out on my own. And they gave me a Dodge Durango, which was like, it was okay. It had issues because when I'd put it in reverse and I'd start accelerating to kind of back into a spot, it would all of a sudden just slam on the emergency brakes, make a loud noise. It was clearly having some issues. Other than that, the Durango was fine. But anyways, it was in the service center for about a week. They would occasionally give me updates on the app. But then when I went to go pick up the vehicle, it was dirty. The vehicle was dirty. Now, I'm not even just talking about the outside, which it was dirty on the outside. There was bird poop on it. Like, this wasn't clearly something that they washed and then, you know, it sat outside for a few hours and it got dirty. This was clearly, they didn't even wash the car whatsoever, which is a little bit odd because I took my Ford in for service, you know, every few months, and I would get it back all cleaned up. In fact, sometimes they would even clean up the floor mats. That's a Ford. This is a Rivian that costs $80,000+, and they're trying to brand themselves as this, you know, Range Rover of electric vehicles, and they treated my car like it was just I don't know, a rental car. Like, it was really dirty on the outside. But not just that, it was dirty on the inside. In fact, I still haven't cleaned up the stain that they left on my center arm console. They've got this little stain over here. I wanted to show it as proof that they got my car dirty. I know there was no stain there because I watched this white interior like a hawk. There is some staining on the driver's seat from blue jeans, but there was no black stains on my center arm console. And they also left like a headlamp located inside. It's almost as if they dropped off my car after finishing the service and just made a mad dash out the door. Like, they didn't even check anything, because even the passenger seat was like super far extended backwards. Like, they didn't even try to put everything back into the position that normal people would have it. In fact, I have my little kind of a rubbery material that sits underneath the car seat back there. Not sure if you can tell on camera, but they had removed that because I think they were adjusting some stuff on the seat, which we'll touch on in just a minute. But they removed it. They removed it entirely, and they did not reinstall it. And I also have little sunshades located on the rear windows. They're pretty much simple, just kind of, you know, stick on. They use kind of static electricity to stay onto the window. They didn't even reinstall that. They pulled it off. They threw it in the back seat. They didn't even take the extra 5 minutes to put things back to how they were when I dropped the vehicle off. Like I said, the car was dirty inside and out. Very frustrating experience. Like, it just didn't feel like the honestly first-class experience I'd get from Ford or any other service center I took my vehicle to. Even Dodge, which I've had really crappy Dodge service experiences, even they usually wash my car or do something that makes me feel at least as if, you know, they covered some of the interior parts up that can get pretty dirty. And then the last thing I want to talk about before I dive into the specific car issues that I had when I took this vehicle in for service and the stuff they resolved has to do with the registration problems I had with Rivian. So if you guys watched my video from a few weeks back, it was titled Rivian made it illegal to drive my car. And in that video, I outlined exactly all the things that happened where they just refused to get me my permanent registration. Even though I paid all the fees, they essentially let my registration expire twice, and there just was no accountability for anybody trying to resolve the issue. It just felt like I was calling into a call center and my message was just going out into the void. And it really exemplifies the terrible experience I've had from Rivian. So this is a buyer beware. Perhaps some of you who are living maybe in more centrally located cities like, you know, LA or New York, where Rivian maybe sells more of their cars, you may have a different experience. But for me here in Utah, where there's a Rivian on every corner, I've had a terrible experience with Rivian, and I really think they need to get their you-know-what together. This is an experience that I would have expected from a giant corporation, like something like, you know, when you call Amazon and, you know, you lost the package and they say, you know what, get lost, right? You kind of expect it, because even if you never shop from Amazon again, Amazon's not going to feel that on their bottom line. Like, they don't care, honestly, if your one customer has a bad experience and never shops from Amazon again. And as a matter of fact, every time I've called Amazon, they've been really nice. Like, their customer service is pretty top-notch. I'm not going to say they're perfect, but they've done some pretty good things for me, even though I'm one small customer out of a pool of hundreds of millions. Rivian, which they've only sold like 50,000 cars in the last year, which is just a drop in the bucket for the auto industry. You would think they would try to hold on to all their customers as best as they could, right? Provide the utmost best customer service experience, because that's really what separates you from the competition. That is what makes some of the issues that I'm about to talk about with my car acceptable, because you know that, hey, if I have an issue, I can call up Rivian, they're going to take care of it. That is the level of service you expect from a smaller business. And I'm going to say Rivian's a small business, because compared to the rest of the auto industry, it is minuscule. And you just don't get that. I've had much better experience from typical dealership models like Ford, like Mercedes, like you name it. Range Rover will come out and pick up the car and drive it. In fact, my Ford did the same thing. I would schedule a service appointment with Ford using their website, and they would come out, pick up the car and drive it back and then bring it back to me. So such great experience from just a regular name brand like Ford. Rivian is far from that, and they really need to get their stuff together. It's honestly been a terrible experience as a brand, and I'm very much second guessing if I would ever consider leasing another Rivian, and not because of the product, strictly because of the company. All right, now let's talk about my recent service experience. So I'm gonna have to pull this up because there was a long list of issues that I had with this vehicle. Stuff that I've kind of noticed over the last 6 months that I've slowly written down because I was like, hey, I got to remember that because that's a big issue. All right, so there was a list of 11 things, some of which they added themselves, but my list was probably about 9 different things. So I really have to use their invoice to really remember all the things. So first off, the thing they did was a courtesy inspection. So not much going on there. The second thing, which was something I told them about, was customer states, I hear rattling, creaking, squeaking from the shocks when driving on a bumpy road. The half shafts, click at slower speeds driving on asphalt roads. So this was my comment. What I noticed as I was driving this car, I would occasionally hear clicking sounds. And, you know, when the car was being parked or when I was starting to drive and I see that the suspension is raising or lowering, it would make a clicking sound. But what was weird was it was making clicking sounds when the suspension wasn't actually moving. Like I could see on the dash when the suspension is going up and down, and it wasn't. And so I would occasionally hear clicking noises, and on some of the forums I noticed that people were talking about that being a half shaft issue. So that's where it came from, is it just kind of felt like things were constantly clicking and rattling, and you know, the industry calls it NVH, noise, vibration, and harshness. The NVH was pretty bad inside of the vehicle, and it progressively got worse. When I first picked up the car, it was fine, and as the months went by and I was driving this car more and more often, I would notice this kind of rattling, shaking, and this clicking noise, and so I brought that up to their attention. Well, this is what their fix was, and you'll be surprised about some of the stuff they had to fix. I mean, for a car with 6,000 miles, it's insane. So the correction or remedy is suspension general diagnostics, air suspension diagnostics, hydraulic suspension diagnostics, and then they test drove it for 30 minutes, and the resolution was to replace the left and the right front hydraulic suspension jounce lines. Yes, they replaced, whatever that means, the jounce assembly on the left and the right hand side. So that means that the issue I was having was a legitimate issue. It's not just like, hey, this is the car. That was a problem. They had to replace the jounce lines to make it a little bit more of a quieter ride inside. That's a pretty big issue after 6,000 miles. The next issue I had, customer states at slower speeds, I hear a rattling from the front dashboard, which was very noticeable. So as I was driving down the road, I would hear this front end just kind of rattling, and it really happened at slower speeds. Primarily as I'm driving kind of in my neighborhood, just going over regular roads, I'd hear kind of like this looseness inside, and it was just this kind of annoying interior sound. And well, there was a problem because their resolution was to pretty much take apart the instrument panel, defrost, and remove and replace the defrost assembly. So there was clearly some issues there. They also mentioned to me in person when I was picking up the vehicle that they added some foam to make it a little bit quieter. And the issue is mostly gone. I still hear it a little bit. It's almost a little bit of a different sound now, but it's definitely much better than it was before. Now, the next issue was, this was something that they added from the factory, Titan hub to knuckle fasteners in 4 locations. Not exactly sure what that is, but they did do that. And then the next thing, customer states, the rear driver's side door takes much more effort to close, appears to be misaligned. And this is true. So I had shown this off in my initial build quality video when I talked about it for this car, but this rear door took a lot of effort to close. Like I would open it and shut it, and it would always kind of stay a little bit open. I had to either push it with my hand or add a lot more force. Like a simple open and close like that would not shut this door. And it wasn't just me, like my wife had the same issue, family members had the same issue. I'd always have to explain, hey, you got to slam this door a little bit harder. So thankfully they had to just align it, and it's fixed. It closes just like every other door now, but that was something that was a little bit frustrating and annoying. Now, for the next issue that they had to fix had to do with an alignment of the front passenger door, something I actually only started noticing in very cold weather, but that was as I was opening this door, you would hear a creaking sound as if the door was rusting. It sounded like an old 1950s pickup truck that's been in Detroit, Michigan for the last 60 years. It was just a very annoying kind of creaking sound. I'll try to throw up some footage if I was able to catch it beforehand. but they determined that was just an alignment issue and they got it fixed, which is what I expected, but it was just kind of like weird that it all of a sudden started happening once the temperatures got colder. Next issue I talked about in my original build quality video was the sound of the frunk when it would shut, especially in hot weather. It would creak a little bit. It sounds like there was some clip that was missing or broken or whatever, so they had to fix that as well. And I haven't heard it since. I've opened it once or twice since they did the service, and looks like they fixed that. So some of the alignment issues they fixed. The next issue I had, again, I started noticing in the cold, was in regards to my gear tunnel door. So my gear tunnel door would start creaking like kind of like, again, like a rusted, you know, pickup truck. You would hear the creaks when I was opening and closing this gear tunnel, both on the driver and passenger side. They ended up finding out that the hinges just needed to be greased up a little bit, and that fixed the issue, which is exactly what I was suspecting it to be. The next issue that I didn't notice in my initial build quality, but I should have, and that had to do with the rear view mirror, specifically this plastic area. I'll try to throw up some footage or video or photo or whatever, but it was popped out, like, and that was, I'm sure, like that from the very beginning. It was just like crooked, and I noticed it from the outside before ever noticing it from the inside, because the position of the rear view mirror, you don't really see that plastic housing, but it was just like crooked and popped out, and clips were busted. And well, their response to this fix: tech found a rear view mirror cover to have several broken clips, resulting in the cover not sitting correctly. Tech replaced damaged clips. And what I like about, or I find kind of funny about this, is they were supposed to charge $110 for this fix, which is just like plastic clips, $110. I mean, what are you, Range Rover? Like, let's be real here. But what I like here is they're doing me a favor by not charging me, and they're saying goodwill provided in the interest of customer satisfaction for a non-warrantable concern. And then it has the labor code. Non-warrantable concern. I picked up the car with the clips being broken. How is that not Rivian's responsibility? I just, like, if I had shown up any other dealership with these types of problems, they would have not even questioned it. And again, they didn't question it. They didn't even bring it up to me. They didn't say they were going to charge me, but then I fought. No, like, that didn't happen. But the fact that they're even including that, there's no question this is a Rivian problem. In fact, back in the day, my Ford Bronco, I had some issues with the screwing of the bolts on the soft top. And I think part of it was my bad. As I was tightening the bolts in, I may have stripped one of the bolts. And so I took it in to Ford, thinking, you know, they're probably going to charge me to have this fixed. And they didn't. They fixed it themselves. They kind of ran a new machine through to fix the thread. They gave me a new bolt. They didn't charge me anything for that. And that's the level of service, again, at a Ford dealership. And here Rivian's like, hey, we're doing you a favor by replacing something or fixing something that was broken from the very beginning before you even bought the car. Also, why is that issue? Why would it be broken before I even picked up this car? Like, I never hit that plastic piece, I guarantee you. It was like that from the very beginning. I just never noticed it. But why? Why is it like that from the factory? Again, just build quality issues from the very beginning. The last thing I want to talk about is, okay, so customer states in conserve mode, the steering wheel will start from a dead stop to about 5 miles per hour. Where he is noticing the shaking. So that's very poorly written. What happened was, as I was in conserve mode one day, and I started hitting on the accelerator, and I noticed a little shimmy from the steering wheel, like a little vibration, just kind of something I never noticed before. And I brought that up to them, and I think there's two things that it could be. One is what they ended up resolving, which is kind of insane, considering, again, a car has 6,000 miles. They found that their rear half-shaft boot is torn, resulting in axle noise. Tech replaced half-shaft and found noise to go away. So they had to replace the half-shafts on my rear, I think it's rear passenger side, rear right side. They replaced half-shafts on a car with 6,000 miles. And I've never taken this car off-roading. I never have. It's insane. Now, that is probably due to the amount of torque going through those half shafts. This was actually a problem the Tesla Model X had, a lot of half shaft failures because there was just too much torque going to the vehicle. And also your angle of position of the torque changes because you have that air suspension. So again, that could be the reason. Still very odd. They should have just gotten better half shafts. But The other thing that could be causing the little bit of vibration that I feel on the steering wheel is something that the tech explained to me when I took them for a ride along. They said that for these types of large motors that move a vehicle, you know, of 7,000 pounds, when you add very little voltage to them, very little power, they tend to kind of vibrate a little bit as they're kind of shutting on and off, which that's kind of layman speak for how he explained it to me. And to me, that makes sense. If you're adding a little bit of power, it might start shimmying. And then obviously if I slammed on the accelerator, it probably wouldn't make that feeling, especially he said when you're on a hill and you touch the accelerator, it might vibrate a little bit. And that's exactly the circumstances I was in. I was on a hill. I started hitting the accelerator and I noticed a little bit of a shimmy, but nonetheless, they replaced the half shafts in the process. And then the last thing on their invoice is they replaced the 12-volt battery. That was, I guess, a factory recommendation. The total charge would have been $350 had they not had these discounts. That's not including the cost of some of those things. Some of the things were zeroed out. And other things, like I said, with the rear view mirror, they were going to charge me 110 bucks for it, but then they had a discount. So I don't really get the invoice very much. I didn't have to pay anything out of pocket, which is how it should be, considering this car has 6,000 miles and it's still under warranty. But it just goes to show this car's not perfect. It's far from being perfect. Now, the issues I have with all those things, honestly, would be okay if there was a company behind it that was willing and, you know, straightforward and trying to help resolve the issues. I get none of that from Rivian. Not only is there service appointments like months out, like my next appointment for that gear tunnel, or I should say, sorry, the truck bed storage and the tonneau cover is not until about a month from now, or 3 or 4 weeks from now. So, and that's their priority scheduling. So if you have an issue, it takes months to get into a service center. And secondly, my big concern is if I have a catastrophic failure on this car, like I've seen on some forums where the HVAC system causes the car to pretty much go into turtle mode, like you can't drive the car. What's going to happen when that happens? Because Rivian is not going to be there by my side. They're just going to kind of leave me hanging dry. Now, thankfully, I'm fortunate that I have another car I could always drive to work. But that's not how it should be when you're paying nearly $100,000, especially their Gen 2 vehicles, over $100,000 for these cars. Their level of service has to go up tremendously if they really want to exist as a company. Based on my experience with regular legacy automakers, they provide better service than Rivian ever has. And it really makes me question the direct-to-consumer model. And I'm hoping that my experience for the next 2.5 years left on this lease is much better than what I've had for the last 6 months, because so far, I've got nothing but bad things to say about Rivian, but I have great things to say about their car. But those two things have to go hand in hand. And there's not enough people out there talking about really how bad the company treats its customers. And so this is me telling you, so that if you guys are in the market for one of these, you take that into consideration. Maybe some of the things I say today don't matter to you, and that's perfectly fine. Everybody has their own set of standards and ideals, and if everything I mentioned to you today is fine, great, go get a Rivian, because this car is fantastic. But it's not perfect, and it's mainly because the company that makes it really doesn't treat you the way you would expect from a startup company that has a vehicle that has lots of issues. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, or at least found it informative. I am glad I have the Rivian, because every day I drive it to work and I sit in it, and I love a lot of things about it. And honestly, I have no issues with the electric platform of it. Like, the range is perfectly fine. For those of you out there that you shouldn't have bought an electric car. The electric cars are the end of the world. That's all BS. Like, the electric part of this is perfectly fine. It's the company behind it. I may have had much better luck with Tesla. Maybe not, right? I can't speak for Tesla. I can't speak for Lucid with the direct-to-consumer model. But with Rivian, it's not ideal. But if you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the videos. I can't promise they're going to be weekly anymore, but I will continue posting. And I will be giving you guys a 6-month update with some of the good, not just the negatives that I discussed in today's video. Check me out on all the social media, same as the channel name. And until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.